Hi everyone, it's Nicole for Simon Says Stamp, and today we are going to be creating a embossed scene card using new embossing folders with coordinating dies and coloring everything in with Tim Holtz's brand new Distress watercolor pencils. And they work amazingly well for this technique, even if you don't want to use watercolor. So the two main sets that we're using are from the brand new Cozy Hugs release from Simon Says Stamp, and we are going to be using the Snowy Birdhouse and the Friendly Birds. From the Snowy Birdhouse, we're going to go ahead and emboss an entire 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch panel of smooth white cardstock with this, and we're going to set that aside. We're going to actually color that in, and that's going to be the base or the background of our scene. Then I'm going to die cut the birdhouse from another piece of smooth white cardstock, line it up in the embossing folder, and run it back through my die cutting machine using the embossing sandwich to get the embossed birdhouse. The detail is incredible. For the remaining pieces from the Snowy Birdhouse, I'm actually going to die cut those from some glitter white cardstock, because that's going to be the snow on the birdhouse. So that's that other die that you can see there on my screen. And I will be die cutting that from the specialty cardstock. I do want to hold on to the circle piece there because I'm going to use that for the inside of my birdhouse. Now kind of ignore the colored panel. I made a wrong color choice, and so I redid it, which is no big deal, but I am going to start coloring in the birdhouse, and you can see it has amazing texture. We use that embossing folder, so we're getting great texture. I am going to be using a combination of the Distress watercolor pencils and a water brush pen to blend it out. You could leave it just like this, and you can see the texture and the detail that you get by coloring it in like this, but I'm going to show you how I'm layering the Distress watercolor pencils to really get the most. So I'm using barn door and fired brick right now, and I put down a whole layer of barn door, and then I'm going to add in the fired brick, which is going to deepen and darken this, which is what I'm really looking for. I want it to look almost like an old barn birdhouse. So we're going to go ahead and add all that color. Let's zoom in just a little bit closer. And then I'm going to take my water brush pen, and I'm just going to carefully blend that out. Now you do tend to kind of lose a little of the detail. I'm going to give you a quick tip here. I'm using 110-pound weight Nina smooth white cardstock, and I didn't have any trouble with warping, but I'm also being super careful not to oversaturate the paper. If you are concerned with that at all, I would highly recommend using a watercolor cardstock. Go ahead and die cut it, run it through then with the embossing folder, and then you can add as much water to that as you want. I found I didn't have any trouble with using water on this, but I have done it before with other mediums, and so I thought I would probably be safe. Now, I really don't like how I lost some of the wood grain detail, but let's just go with it for a minute. And I'm going to use some, I think, I'll tell you wrong. I have the colors all listed down below in the description. Vintage photo, I think, is what that is. So if you are wondering what colors exactly I used for each section, I will list that below. I mixed up all of my sets. I pull my coloring mediums by color, not by set, and because each set had basically a rainbow assortment of color, I mixed and matched them. That way I could just go to my reds and pinks, my yellows, oranges, my greens, blues, purples, and then my neutrals. So for me, that worked better. Now I waited a little bit for the birdhouse to dry. That's what I was adding the color to the roof and the base and kind of the opening, and you'll notice that I didn't worry too much about coloring super nice because some of those areas are going to have the snow. So I just wanted to get a little bit of a base there. But I'm going over the entire birdhouse with black soot. Black soot is what I kind of call my magic pencil or color. It doesn't matter if it's a pencil, distress oxide, or whatever. Black soot is my favorite. It's just gives everything that moody feel. Then I'm even going to go in with fired brick and do the same thing and see how the wood grain is now popping, and also kind of that the boards or the background is really popping now. That's what I'm looking for. I did not want to lose that detail. I did kind of have a little uh-oh there, so I just blended it out. Okay, on my full panel, I'm going to go ahead and take some Speckled Egg Distress Oxide ink, and I'm going to lightly ink up my panel. Now, is this going to get ink on the parts of the image or the scene that I don't want it? Yes, it is. But with the Distress watercolor pencils, you can color over Distress Oxide ink. It's probably... There's a lot of things to love about these pencils, but I think this is my very favorite thing about them, is that you can color right over the top. Meaning I am going to color in the greenery and the pine cones down there near the base of the birdhouse with some pencils, and you are really going to be able to tell that they were inked blue. And I love that so, so much. So this just gives our background a little bit of color. It's not so stark white. And you can see we're going to pop that birdhouse on top and how cute that's going to be. Let's add color to the beautiful pine needles and pine cones and things around here. I'm going to use Rustic Wilderness. And I'm also going to use a couple shades of brown. Let me see if I can find them really quick. Again, I will have them all listed exactly down below so that if you want to recreate it or you want to know what set it's from, you can look at your sets and see. Walnut Stain and Vintage Photo are the browns I'm using. But this is Rustic Wilderness. And look at that. Look at the greenery pop. Not only that, super easy to use these to color embossing. I have tried many things. I love using zigs. I also have done Copics over embossing. And while I love the effect, you have to be a little more careful. And I really wasn't all that careful with this. I very quickly laid that color down, and I was completely amazed at the results and how awesome it looked. Super, super happy with these pencils. And again, highly recommend them. Definitely, if you are looking for something fun for your loved ones to put in your stocking or under the tree this year, this would be a recommendation from me. I think it would be really fun to find these in a stocking at Christmas time. Look at those pine cones. I love them. Now, I will say I had the benefit of coloring one of the panels in before this one and messing it up. And I found that blending out the pine cones with water lost some of the detail. And so I decided not to overcolor them. And again, this is black soot. Black soot is just kind of drawing in some definition, especially for something that doesn't have an outline. This is basically what I kind of consider a no-line type of look. And with a no-line look, I love having a little bit of darker around the edges. This actually might be that dark brown, walnut stain, and not black soot. Either way, just something nice and dark, and I love it. I think it's perfect. So I am going to take the walnut stain, pardon me. I didn't think that the roof or the birdhouse opening or the birdhouse base was dark enough for my taste. So I'm going to go over the gathered twigs with that. And I do think I like the little bit darker. I'm going to lay it on my background and kind of do a double check. And yes, I for sure like that much, much better. So it's looking pretty cute. I'm going to lay my glittery pieces on. I'm very visual, and so I will often double check as I'm working just to kind of see how it's looking. And it's about this time when I still have maybe, 2/3 of the card to go that I'm excited and want it to be done. Now we are going to take the friendly birds, and we aren't going to use the background from this one for this card, but we are going to use the birds. So what I did was I die cut the birds with the coordinating dies, and then I placed them in the embossing folder and embossed them. This gives us an amazing outline to color in. I'm going to color in both birds exactly the same, so you're going to see the same colors used throughout. Now, because I picked that light blue speckled egg background, I thought that light, or kind of not exactly light, but light and dark blue birds against the red of the birdhouse would be really pretty and really pop. I used a little wild honey as well as black soot for the beak. And then we're going to use black soot, and let me just grab these colors so I can tell you. I know the light gray is hickory smoke, prize ribbon, and speckled egg. So speckled egg, distress oxide for the background, speckled egg, distress watercolor crayon, and prize ribbon for the bird. And the prize ribbon is really what really gives us rich color, I guess is what I want to say. And look at the detail. Now, if you don't want to use water on this, which I did end up using water, but I think there could be an argument for not using water because you can really see that detail over the embossing. But I will go back over it with black soot and prize ribbon in different places. The water does help, like if you make a mistake, you can kind of, smudge it out a little bit, but it's definitely with whatever you feel comfortable with. For the first bird, it took me a little more time than the second. I will tell you, I think I left the coloring in for both birds, but I have sped it up quite a lot for the second because it's basically the same. What I find so easy about coloring in embossed images is that you can kind of follow the line much like you would with a stamped image in that outline. Really easy, and I think the results are amazing. I am not the best watercolor artist at all. I don't even want to say that. I struggle with watercolor. I want to be good, but I don't take the time to practice. I know you guys ask me all the time about learning to color, let's say with Copics. I get that question quite a bit. And I always say practice. Well, I'm not taking my own advice because I know it would be the same with watercolor. I could be proficient enough if I would spend a little more time practicing, but I feel like these watercolor pencils give me enough of help, or give me enough help, I guess I want to say, that I feel like I'm good at it, even though it's not, quote unquote watercolor. I love that I can kind of get that look in a medium that I feel comfortable using. Maybe that's how I should say it. So I have blended out the areas now, and I am glad because I do think it gives me a much softer base to start from. And I love the addition of that black soot with the wild honey because it just gives the legs and the beak a little bit moodier feel. Now, after I've added water, probably ought to let it dry a little bit. And again, I used minimal water because this is not watercolor cardstock. But I'm going to go back with my markers. How about pencils then? And I am going to deepen and darken some areas. I'm also going to take almost the side of my pencil and rub it over the embossed areas so that the embossing picks up some more of that color and it gives a little bit more detail. And we're even going to go in and add some shadows and things. I always like to use my black soot for this. And just, continue layering and adding the depth and dimension that we want to see for these images. Now I did try to avoid the eye, but I wasn't super careful about it. I will be taking the black soot and going around that eye, and then taking a black jelly roll pen and going in the center to make the eye nice and glossy. You could also use like Nouveau Crystal drops or something to that effect if you feel more comfortable with that. But look at the eye. So we're going to do the same thing for the second bird. And again, I have sped this up just a bit because it's basically the same thing, just the mirror image. These are the perfect size birds too. Oh, I love them. I could see using them on all kinds of things, all kinds of cards. You can color them in many different ways, and I think they would be amazing. You could even take this birdhouse. Well, I guess it kind of does have the snow on it, doesn't it? I was going to say, and maybe turn it into another season. You could cut a different roof for it, like even kind of hand cut one maybe or something. And so it doesn't have snow on it, and just do a different seasonal birdhouse. But you're going to see how I dress up the birdhouse here in a minute, because you guys know me and you know that my extra wouldn't allow me to just use the birdhouse and the birds. I felt like our birds decorated their birdhouse, don't you think? I always talk to you guys about telling myself a story when building a scene, and my story here was these birds built themselves, or decorated their home for the holidays. And they're going to add some little greenery above the door or the opening to their home. Now, I think my cardstock wasn't all the way dry when I laid my pencils down in that area that got really dark, but I found that I kind of liked it, and so I left it. It doesn't have to be super perfect. And then I went back to my second bird, and now that it's nice and dry, and the black soot is really catching on some of those raised areas, and I'm not going to overblend that out. Just a couple things where I didn't think I colored very nice. It's looking amazing, and I love it. Okay, I do want to talk to you guys about where I found my extra images. So the little leaves and bow are from the Turtle Doves set. This is a year, maybe 2 years old. And then the pine needles are from a pine needle wreath from Simon Says Stamp. Both of these sets are Simon Says Stamp. And that is, I don't know how old. I looked in my stash to find something the right size and scale, which was kind of tricky. I had a lot of things that were big. So for the pine needles, and I picked the pine needles from the wreath because they were tiny. I am going to pick 2 of them, and I'm going to ink them up with Rustic Wilderness Distress Oxide Spray. Instead of trying to take my pencils to something so detailed, I decided I didn't want to do that. And then I thought, while I was at it, let's go ahead and use the Fresh Balsam Distress Mica spray, or stain, pardon me, for the greenery. So it's got a little bit of shimmer, and it's going to be a little bit different color. And then we've got the Distress Oxide Rustic Wilderness for the pine needles, and the greenery is going to be beautiful. So you don't always have to stick with one certain medium for the entire card. Mix and match. That made coloring those really easy. And it's going to look amazing on our bird's birdhouse. On a piece of black cardstock, I am going to stamp Merry Days. Merry Days comes from the Let It Snow. Yes, I almost thought I said that wrong. The Let It Snow stamp set from the Cozy Hugs release. In fact, both greetings I'm using are from this, because the embossing folder sets we're using don't have greetings. They're not a stamp set or anything like that. And so I just picked some, and I just picked some from a new stamp set, but you might have some in your stash already. There is a coordinating die for Merry Days, which I love. So it's going to be really easy to die cut. And I think the darkness of this is going to really look nice with our birdhouse. Now I did use a powder tool first, so I want to buff away any of that excess ink. Then I want to die cut our sentiment And then on just a scrap left over of this white cardstock, I'm going to stamp the rest of the greeting, Winter Wishes Headed Your Way, using VersaFine ONYX black ink. And I'm going to die cut this with a Simon Says Stamp sentiment label die, which is also one of my most used and favorite products. I am going to speed up the video to put together our birdhouse. So first I laid down the dark circle that goes inside. I laid that right on the embossed background. Then I am going to back my birdhouse with foam adhesive. This is the Simon Says Stamp foam adhesive. I absolutely love it. First of all, I love foam adhesive, but I'm kind of picky about my foam adhesive. The backing paper comes off so easy, you guys. I just can't even say enough great things about it. It's my favorite. I'm going to pop that in place on my background, and I like the little bit of dimension. We're going to glue our glittery snow on the roof, over the door, and along the bottom. Look how beautiful that is. I just love this birdhouse so much. Then we're going to pop up the Merry Days. I'm going to lay my birds down because they're both going to be standing there. I'm also going to put foam adhesive on the back of my sentiment strip, and I might have to rearrange and move my sentiments just a little bit here to get them to fit together exactly how I want. I also need to lay out my greenery so I can get an idea of where that's going to go. And then the bow, which I think I forgot to mention, I did die cut that from some Simon Says Stamp gold metallic cardstock. So it's going to have a beautiful shimmer to it, or not shimmer, but a metallic shine to it. And I think it's just perfect for holiday. I am going to put foam adhesive on the parts of the bird that are not on the birdhouse. So if it overhangs off onto the background, the tail and like the wing, we are going to put some foam adhesive there, and then the rest will be liquid adhesive, and we're just going to have it look like the bird is standing there on the base of the birdhouse. See if I can get my sentiments put in place. And I think they're too close because that's going to cover up part of that, which we do not want. Let's drop it down just a little bit. That looks a little better, but let's get it centered. And that looks good. Once we have it where we want, you can go ahead and just kind of press it down in place. Both of the greetings have foam adhesive behind them. And then we're going to do the same thing for the second bird. Foam adhesive on the parts of the bird that are hanging off on the background, liquid adhesive on anything else, acrylic block to help hold everything nice and flat while I'm working. And then the top of the birdhouse is kind of plain. I felt like this was the perfect opportunity to decorate our birdhouse for the holiday. And of course, a little garland above the door is beautiful. So we're going to grab some of our pine needles and our greenery, and I'm just going to make it into like a little swag. And then where everything meets is where we're going to glue our bow. Look how beautiful! I love it so much. Now comes my favorite part, embellishing. We're going to add some little white berries to our greenery. These are some white pearl gems from Pretty Pink Posh, marshmallow gems, a couple of little white jelly hearts from Trinity Stamps right here above the birds. And then in the sky, we're going to take some of the new sequin mix. I can't remember the name, but there is a link in the description below that is part of the Cozy Hugs release. And we're just going to glue some snowflakes around our background. And I'm also going to add some more Pretty Pink Posh marshmallow pearls, some little ones in the center of the snowflakes, and then just some kind of medium-sized ones scattered about. And I'm going to fiddle with this for a little bit, figure out where I want everything to go. We will glue this entire panel, or adhere this entire panel, to a white top fold card base to finish the design. So I would love to know in the comments, what is your favorite product from the Simon Says Stamp Cozy Hugs release? What would you like to see me use in an upcoming video? Definitely drop me a comment down below and tell me what products you want to see used, and I will do my best to get a video or videos out with those products this month. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for this Simon Says Stamp Cozy Hugs card featuring brand new products from the release. The supplies I used to create my card are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here is another video featuring Simon Says Stamp products that you might be interested in. I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to my amazing Patreon members. If you'd like to become a member of Patreon, please click the link in the description below. We would love to have you as part of our growing community. October celebrates 1 year of me being on Patreon, and we have lots of fun things planned. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel, click the like button, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to always be notified when I have a new card making video. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll see you next time.